Welcome back. We are discussing the lesson Life Processes. In the previous session, we have seen the process of nutrition, wherein organism obtains the food and the food is digested into simple substances like glucose, amino acids, fatty acids and glycerol. Now, this food needs to be broken down in order to produce energy, and that is what we will see in this session. Respiration is a process where food is broken down to produce energy. This energy, as we know, is essential for all the life processes, including the maintenance processes. Now, different organisms have different methods of breaking down the food. Some organisms, they will use oxygen to break down the food, whereas some others, oxygen is not required for the process of breakdown of food. Based on this, we can classify the process of respiration into two types: aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic is the one that uses oxygen, whereas in anaerobic respiration, oxygen is not required. What is being broken down here? That is your food. Essentially, it is the carbohydrate, proteins and fats. Carbohydrate is the most energy rich source. So, carbohydrate is being broken down. That is basically glucose. It is the simplest sugar molecule. If glucose is not available, then body will use proteins as well as fats, especially in cases where we are starving, etc. So, let us discuss some more differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Now, aerobic respiration, it takes place in mitochondria, whereas anaerobic respiration takes place in the cytoplasm of the cell. Because oxygen is being used to break down the glucose, there is complete breakdown of glucose. That is C6H12O6 is completely broken down, whereas in anaerobic respiration, glucose is broken down partially. Because of which, the products of aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide, water and energy. Whereas in the case of anaerobic respiration, because glucose is not completely broken down, the products are carbon dioxide, ethanol and lactic acid. We will discuss about this in detail. And most importantly, the amount of energy produced in aerobic respiration is very high as compared to anaerobic respiration, where the energy produced is very low. Why? Because glucose is not completely broken down. Simple. Point to remember, this is taking place inside the cell. Therefore, sometimes it is also known as cellular respiration. Do not confuse breathing with respiration. Breathing is a physical process where we take in air and we expel air out, that is carbon dioxide out. Respiration is a cellular process. It takes place inside the cell and it is a biochemical process where energy is produced. In breathing, energy is not produced. Right? In the cytoplasm, there is glucose. So, in the first step of respiration, glucose, which is a 6-carbon molecule, C6, this is broken down into a compound known as pyruvic acid or pyruvate. So, the first step in respiration is a 6 carbon glucose molecule is broken down to give you a 3 carbon molecule called as pyruvate. Where does this process take place? This process takes place in the cytoplasm. Then the pyruvate can either in the cytoplasm pyruvate, I am representing it with P. This pyruvate can then go to mitochondria and then it will undergo aerobic respiration. That is, pyruvate is broken down with the help of oxygen, or the pyruvate can remain in the cytoplasm and it will undergo anaerobic respiration. So that is about the steps in respiration. Let us talk about aerobic and anaerobic a little in detail. In the case of aerobic respiration, we can say that our glucose, that is C6H12O6, is first broken down to pyruvate. So this is the first step. This pyruvate can either go to mitochondria or it will remain in the cytoplasm. That is in the case of aerobic respiration. The pyruvate produces carbon dioxide, water and energy. This is what takes place in most of the organisms. But in small organisms like bacteria, etc., they don't require much energy. So the pyruvate remains in the cytoplasm. A phenomenon called as fermentation takes place. So bacteria undergo anaerobic respiration in a process called as fermentation, where the glucose, that is pyruvate, is broken down to give carbon dioxide and ethanol, which is C2H5OH, plus energy. This is what is called as fermentation. This process is used in bakeries, etc., to produce bread, to produce alcohol, wine, etc. So that is what is called as fermentation. The amount of energy produced is less. As you can see, the 3 carbon molecule is not completely broken down, so it is partially broken down. Then sometimes in our human body itself, what happens under strenuous conditions, when we are doing heavy exercise, etc., what happens? The cells require more energy. So for the cells to produce more energy, what happens? More oxygen is required. But if oxygen is insufficient, so in the cases of insufficient oxygen, it is in the muscle cells, the pyruvate molecule is broken down to give lactic acid and small amount of energy. So if the concentration of lactic acid increases in the cell, so we call it as cramps. So this will result in what are called as muscle cramps. This happens when we are doing heavy exercises. So this is also a type of anaerobic respiration taking place in muscle cells. Different organisms have different methods of obtaining air or obtaining oxygen required for breakdown of food. For example, in the case of unicellular organisms like amoeba, bacteria or protozoans, etc., it is only single cell. The entire cell is in contact with the environment, and only diffusion is enough to supply oxygen. So oxygen in the outside environment is in higher concentration, inside the cell oxygen is present in lower concentration. So oxygen will simply diffuse from higher concentration into the cell where concentration is less. But in the case of multicellular organisms where there are organs and organ systems, as you know, diffusion is not enough to supply oxygen to each and every cell. So there are specialized organs present to transport oxygen to different parts of the body. And if you talk about organisms that are either terrestrial or aquatic, now here there is a huge difference. Terrestrial animals, they can obtain the oxygen very easily because the concentration of oxygen in the atmospheric air, as you know, is 21%. So oxygen is readily available. But in the case of aquatic animals like fishes, the amount of oxygen is very less because oxygen is present in the dissolved form. Therefore, they have a higher breathing rate in order to obtain more oxygen. For example, if you observe fishes, if you observe them very carefully, you can see that their mouth is always opening and closing, opening and closing. So what's actually happening is when the fish opens its mouth, water will enter into the mouth. Behind the mouth, there are what are called as gills. These gills are richly supplied with blood vessels. So when the water it passes over these gills, oxygen present in the water is then supplied or is then taken into the blood vessels. So because the dissolved oxygen is very less, the breathing rate is very high. They always keep opening, closing. Right? So that's the difference between terrestrial animals which have a lower breathing rate, whereas aquatic animals have a higher breathing rate. Most of the organisms have some common properties that is observed in these respiratory organs. It could be gills or it could be lungs. So the respiratory organs found in different organisms, they have certain common features. Now one of the most important features of any respiratory organ is that these organs will have large surface area to obtain more and more oxygen. For instance, take the case of human respiratory system. Inside the lungs, we have structures known as alveoli or air sacs. These air sacs produce a large surface area for absorption of oxygen. So this is one common feature of all respiratory organs. They have a large surface area. Point number 2. These respiratory organs are richly supplied with blood vessels. That is, we can see that these are highly vascular because once the respiratory organs it absorbs oxygen, we require a transport system that needs to transport this oxygen to different parts, to different cells, and this blood itself is used to collect the byproducts such as carbon dioxide also. So you can find that these organs are richly supplied with blood vessels. See, now if the animals are large, big enough, so the pressure will not be sufficient to transport oxygen from one part of the body to another part of the body. These organs have what are called as respiratory pigments. So these organs have respiratory pigments. So these pigments will help in transporting the oxygen and carbon dioxide. For example, take in the case of human beings, hemoglobin. So this hemoglobin pigment is present on the red blood cells. So what does this hemoglobin pigment do? The function of hemoglobin pigment is it will attach to oxygen molecule. It is the carrier of the oxygen molecule. Whereas the waste product obtained from respiration, that is, one of the products is carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide needs to be thrown out of the cells. This carbon dioxide is transported by the plasma of blood. So RBC present in the blood will transport oxygen, whereas the plasma, that is the liquid portion of the blood, it will transport carbon dioxide, because carbon dioxide it will easily dissolve in plasma. Let us now discuss about the human respiratory system. What are the different structures present in the respiratory system, and what are the mechanisms by which human beings obtain oxygen and throw the carbon dioxide out. The organs which help in the process of respiration in human beings are called as lungs. There are two lungs present on the left and right side of the human heart. So the cavity in which the lung is present is called as the thoracic cavity. The lungs are well protected by the rib cage. So the bones of the ribs will protect the lungs. And below the lungs there is a muscular structure, a dome-shaped structure called as the diaphragm. So this is very unique to mammals. Only mammals have diaphragms. The entry of air into the lungs, this process is what is called as breathing. Now, if you look at the diagram of the human respiratory system, we breathe in oxygen from the atmospheric air. The air enters through the two nostrils. It is covered by a nose. So, the nostrils carry the air into the nasal passage. The air enters inside. In the nasal passage, it is provided with hair and mucus. This mucus is responsible for trapping the dust and other substances present in the air. The hair also will help in filtering of the air. From the nasal passage, the air will enter into a common opening, that is the pharynx. From the pharynx, the air will then enter into what is called as the trachea. So the movement of air is called as the windpipe or trachea. Trachea is known as the windpipe. The trachea, it is made up of cartilaginous rings. It is not made up of bone, it is made up of cartilaginous rings which are C-shaped. So, like this, we will find that it is incomplete. So, this is what is called as the trachea. So, from the trachea will then branch into the left lung and the right lung. This branch is what is called as the bronchus. So, from the trachea, it goes to the bronchus. There are two bronchus, left and right. This bronchus will then further divide into bronchioles. Further branches of the bronchus, bronchioles. There would be as many as 3 types of bronchioles: primary bronchioles, secondary bronchioles, and tertiary bronchioles. At the end of the tertiary bronchioles, you will find air sacs, or known as alveoli. Alveoli is plural, alveolus is singular. So there are many sac-like structures at the end of bronchioles. These alveoli are the structural and functional parts of the lungs. This is where the exchange of gases takes place. These alveoli, they have large surface area, point number 1. They are covered by blood capillaries, point number 2, which will help in exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide by the process of what is called as breathing. So let us now understand the mechanism of inspiration and expiration. Step number 1 in the process of inspiration. So when we are in the relaxed state, when we are not breathing, we are relaxed state, the diaphragm, it is in a dome shaped. So it is concave shaped. Now when we start breathing in, taking the air inside, what happens? The diaphragm is pushed down, it becomes flat. So the concave structure becomes flat. Now because of this, the volume inside the thoracic cavity will increase. The volume will increase. When the volume increases, the pressure will decrease. Because of the decrease in pressure inside the thoracic cavity, what happens? Outside pressure is more, inside pressure is less. So air will enter from higher pressure inside to lower pressure. And the rib cage, it will move up and outwards with the help of the external intercostal muscles, that is inspiration. In the second step, that is expiration or exhaling the air out, what happens? So the rib cage will now move downwards and inwards, and the diaphragm is pushed up, so it will once again become concave, because of which the volume inside will decrease. When it is pushed up, volume will decrease. When volume will decrease, pressure will increase. So because of this increased pressure, air is thrown out through the nostrils. This is how air is taken in the process of inspiration, and air is breathed out in the process of expiration. The rib cage, the diaphragm, these two play an important role in inspiration and expiration. Once the air enters into the lungs, from there it will go to the alveoli. From the alveoli, as I already told you, oxygen will enter into the blood vessel, carbon dioxide will enter into the alveoli, and carbon dioxide is thrown out. This oxygen will be used up by cells to break down the glucose and produce energy. Now this energy, what we are speaking about, it is stored in the chemical form called as ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This ATP is like a energy currency of the cell. For example, we can compare this ATP molecule to our mobile phone battery. When the mobile phone battery will decrease, what do? We put it for charging. So once again the battery, it will increase, isn't it? Similarly, when energy is produced in the process of breakdown of glucose, that is in aerobic respiration, this energy is used to produce a molecule called as ATP. Each ATP molecule has a certain amount of certain calories of energy. Whenever energy is required, this ATP is used up to produce energy. That is the process of respiration. Thank you.